Welcome back to Intentional Trips, and today we are back in the story side of things, starting in the end of March 2021 when I went to Costa Rica and stepped into a current that I had been in many times in my life before, this current of the absolute magic that happens for me when I am traveling with intention. One that just shows me everything that is possible in this world that I now recognize, right, as being in my flow state. The same place that artists experience when they're painting or musicians experience when they're making music. That thing for me has always happened when I have been somewhere on earth where I don't know where I am, no one knows who I am, and I'm just trusting the intuitive voice in my own heart, right? Because that's really what flow state is. It is the absence of mind, of thinking. It is just trusting that inner voice, right? And for some people that manifests through their fingertips in the form of what they create, and for me that has always manifested in the magic that happens when I am traveling with no agenda, nothing other than that voice that just says you must. That is one of the many things that we will be speaking about here on this podcast. um but to bring us back, right, to late March 2021, I had been in lockdown like most of the world had for a solid year at that point, just over a year. And I was in a position where I was able to travel for free. I was a flight attendant at the time, but obviously I wasn't flying. I had made a lot of money in the last year, which is not something that most people could say for that year. But for me, it had been very financially lucrative, and I was in a spot where it was safe. It felt safe and ethical, morally acceptable for me to be traveling, which is something that I struggled a lot with, right? Like the morality and the ethics of international travel in general is something that I have struggled with my entire life. But that was, especially in the pandemic, was something that I really, really sat in a lot before I went to Costa Rica. Um, but all of that to say, there's this call that has existed within me my entire life, right? That basically that I now recognize as my own voice in the future, this current present version of me that is telling the story, the one who has lived the journey, the one who has healed all of the demons that lived within me, the one who has done everything that I knew I needed to do. That voice called to me my entire life, and it called in different ways. It pulled me to different places, but in this moment, and it had been speaking to me long before March 2021. And after a year in lockdown, it actually, I mean, this is the thing, right, with your soul, with listening to your heart, that the more we ignore it, the harder it gets to hear. For a while, there's this period where it starts screaming, right? Being like, listen to me. You need to listen. Whatever the thing is for you, the thing that's like, you have to do this. There's a period where that is so loud. But as you ignore it, it gets quieter and quieter and quieter and easier to kind of disregard, even though it's still faint in the background. And after a year of the pandemic, that voice in me was calling, and my brain that had been in this world where it was like, well, maybe you just should do what society says you're supposed to do, which is never what I've ever wanted. It's never what I've done, right? My life, again, before this, I had lived in half a dozen countries all over the world. I'd always traveled, I'd always had to listen to that voice, and I'd also always gone back to some semblance of a normal life because I was afraid of my dreams, and I would let myself taste them in certain ways. And there's a lot of nuance in everything in this life, right? But one of the things that I think is really important to understand is that you can simultaneously be happy and joyful and living meaningful experiences and living a beautiful life while also feeling like you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing, like something is wrong, like there is a hole that you're trying to fill in different ways, right? And that, for me, was those existed within me for so long. um and so all of this to say, after a year of just kind of isolation, and even within COVID, I had driven out west and I had been car camping for 2 months, and I had been finding different ways to kind of try to be in different spaces and still listen to myself. And I'd really given myself the space of lockdown to be writing more, to be exploring my own consciousness. I'd been sitting with psychedelics a few times in the last year, and it was this like there were these two things within me, this voice of fear that was like, just forget it all. Just bury it. The dream, the ambition, the everything, just throw it away. And there was this deeper truth that has just reverberated through me my entire life that is like, you have to live this thing, and you have lived it in ways, but what the ways you have done it are not true. They are not right, because you wouldn't still be feeling this if you had done what it is that you know you need to do. And there was this very almost like, I don't know, like bittersweet feeling that I was feeling in the winter of 2021, where I could tell that in so many ways what I was experiencing was almost like the last time. Like, I knew so many of my friends in Chicago who I was hardly seeing, but we were communicating. I was quarantining with a few friends at that point as well. And I could almost feel this like sad, grateful glow that I was like, I know that I am going to finally do it, to commit to me, and that these friends, these people of mine, are choosing a life that is a little bit more quote unquote normal, whatever that even means, right? But they were starting to think about long-term partners, and maybe moving to the suburbs, and kind of just committing to that version of life. And I knew that that was always wrong for me. And I wanted so desperately to be able to keep all of those things at the same time, right? I wanted to live the life of my dreams while also being part of that world, because I loved that world in so many ways, even though it viscerally felt wrong on every level of my being. But all of this to say, in the spring of 2021, I actually had this um a few things that appeared. There was this call in me that said, go to Costa Rica. And that voice was very loud and clear. And one of my good friends, she and I shared a birthday that were close together. It was going to be my 30th birthday in early April. And we had been talking about maybe celebrating that together, which would have meant staying in the US, right? And that is something I very dearly wanted to do, because I loved this person so much. And there was so much beauty in the idea of turning 30 together, right? And the other thing that was potentially open was a 10-day Vipassana meditation, which is a practice that I had sat in before. Vipassana is a style of meditation. And during the 10-day retreats, you're basically meditating for 11 or 12 hours a day. There's no reading, no writing, no listening to music. You're not really supposed to make eye contact with other people. There's no speaking. It's completely silent. And I was feeling called back into that space. And what I can see so clearly now, right, is the separate, these different pulls. The pull towards silent meditation, which was this pull inward, this pull into my own consciousness, which was the same thing that had been pulling me into the psychedelics that I had been sitting with in the last year and the last few years, but especially during COVID. I had 3 profound experiences with psychedelics from when lockdown started, basically. And so this thing that was like, go back to Vipassana, go back to going deeper into that universe. um the pull to Costa Rica, which was this pull that was so native to me, of go find yourself somewhere on earth that is completely new to you, and let your let your bones remember what it feels like to be somewhere new, to just be in that that gauntlet of all of the magic, but also the things that go wrong, and just the smells and the sights and the everything that happens when you're somewhere where you just have never been before. And the way that I've always known that awakened me. And and then that the third thing, right, of kind of doing the thing that I had been doing, the thing that I knew in my heart that I had outgrown. Ooh, it still feels yeah. And that I wanted to not have outgrown, right? Like, I wanted to want a life where spending my birthday with that friend, with that group of friends, was something that was going to feel enough. And I had in some ways forced myself for years to try to pretend that it had been enough. And again, that's not to say that there was not so much joy and love in all of the years that I spent in the life that I was outgrowing. That is part of the reason why it was so hard to leave, because there was so much wonder in it. And I knew that it wasn't right. I knew that I would have been living by someone else's definition of what it was I was supposed to be doing, not any actual person, but someone within me that was telling me, well, maybe you could do this and it would feel okay. And I knew that it wouldn't, right? And I ended up obviously choosing to go to Costa Rica. And there was a lot in me that was just, it's like we convince ourselves that the thing that we once felt or experienced maybe is gone forever. And in a lot of ways, of course, that is true. Like you can never go home again. You can never experience something for the first time again. And that is so much magic, like so much of the magic around having new experiences. And that's what I think travel gives to people, right? Is that it's like fresh perspective, fresh everything. And there is so much magic in this life of being able to just experience anything for the first time. But when we attach to that, right, that's the pitfall, right, of attaching to like, well, it's going to feel the same way that it felt before, and it's like, well, we can't. No, it won't, but it might still feel magic. And in the same way that a musician, when they play a song the second time, it's not going to feel like the first time that they completely channeled it and, played it for the first time, but it's still that flow. It's still that magic for them. And with travel, and I had done this infinite times before where my brain, my fear had tried to convince me that maybe the magic was gone. Maybe I didn't need it anymore. Maybe it wasn't, maybe like just a million reasons as to why I shouldn't go or it just wouldn't be worth it or whatever it was. And the thing in my heart, that pull in my heart that was like, you must, you must, you must, you must, you must, won, as it has gratefully always won, even if it takes years sometimes for me to hear it again. And I got on the plane. And here's the thing too, is like the way that the magic just unfolds, right? When we take a step towards our destiny, towards our future, towards our heart. I should not have gotten on the airplane that took me to Dallas and then to Costa Rica. At the time, I was a flight attendant, so I was flying standby. And when I got to the airport to fly from Chicago down to Dallas, the flight was completely full. There was, I think, like 17 people ahead of me on standby. So I shouldn't have gotten on the plane. There were no seats, and there were 17 other people who should go first. But as a flight attendant, I had the ability to sit in the jump seat, which is not a regular chair, right? That's the jump seat is for flight attendants. So I was allowed to sit there even though I wasn't working. And so they were able to give me the jump seat. And when they had closed the aircraft door, a flight attendant came to the back of the plane and was like, I don't know how this is possible, but there's a seat in the exit row. Somehow they're just like, there's 17 people in the terminal that are supposed to be on this plane, but they didn't get that seat and you can just go sit there. So I ended up getting this, like, all the leg room, all the whatever. The universe is just like, you're in the right place. Flew down to Dallas, where I stayed in a hotel room again that was provided for me. A beautiful friend who was a flight attendant, she had a hotel room that she wasn't using, and so I stayed in this lovely hotel room for free. The next morning I got on a plane and I got down to Costa Rica. And the thing with traveling for me, right, is that, like, well, first it's important also to say that, like, my soul has just never felt right on American soil. There's a million reasons for that. We'll get into some of them as we go through this entire journey together. Um, but in this moment, all that matters is that my heart and soul have just felt trapped when I am in the US my entire life. That, again, doesn't mean that there hasn't been joy and happiness and good things that have happened there. And I have always known that it is wrong for me. And one of the things, that anybody who has taken a step towards their dreams understands and has felt is that feeling, that release, that love, that thing that washes over you, that's like, this is right, that releases a weight that you didn't even realize you were carrying. And the second that the airplane took off and we were in the air, and I had had all of these fears and these doubts and these things in me being like, you shouldn't go, you shouldn't go, you shouldn't go, you shouldn't go. As soon as we were in the air on the way to Costa Rica, I just felt these weights, and the weights of the pandemic and just all of this fall away. Again, this is not to say that traveling say fixes all your problems, right? There's so much to it. There is work, there is nuance, there's understanding, and there is something about just knowing that you, and that's what flights are, bookends, flights are portals, flights literally, it's like one chapter. The second that that plane left the earth, one chapter closed and another one began. And my soul knew that. My soul could hear me today, 5 years down the line, telling the story of how everything shifted when I actually got on that plane and let myself go. And when I got down to San Jose, um, again, it's just that feeling of the air in a new place. And I hadn't, it had been winter in Chicago. It had been cold and walking outside and it's like 85 degrees and humid and there's cars and there's people and there's things, and I'm getting in an Uber. And when was the last time I got in an Uber? And I can feel my entire being like, oh, we're back. We're back. We're back. We're back. We're alive. And I took an Uber to this hostel in San Jose where I had booked my first night because I had no plan. I had no plan whatsoever. Once I got to Costa Rica, I didn't know how long I'd be there, didn't know where I was going. I had spoken to a friend who had recommended one town to me. And basically, he had had a very profound experience there, and he's somebody whose wisdom I trust quite deeply. And yeah, and I got to this hostel, and what's funny is that I have never really actually felt comfortable in hostels. Again, I am somebody who has traveled a lot, lived in a lot of places, and I've just always felt very uncomfortable being in most. There have been a few hostels on earth that I have stayed in where it has felt really right, and a lot of that has had actually just ended up being the people that were there, right? It's the vibe, it's the energy. Um but even in my early 20s, it was just like I never really felt cool enough. I just like, and I was like, I never really wanted to like go on a giant bar crawl and just have the same vapid, pointless conversation, of where were you? What are you doing? Where are you going? And it's like, well, what is, I, looking back, even though I forced myself into a lot of situations and skins and ways of being for a long time in my life that weren't authentic, weren't fully true, but I thought it was, I was trying really hard to just be someone I thought I was supposed to be. Yeah, it's like I want to have real, true, deep connections with people. I didn't at least feel comfortable. I just felt like awkward, like everybody was looking around and they knew that I was the one person that wasn't supposed to be there, right? That there was like secret conversations that all the other cool backpackers were having where they're like, can you believe she's here? Who does she think she is? Which is also, I mean, emblematic of the entire way that I had felt for most of my life, right? Is that it's like, I don't really belong. I'm not actually one of these people. I'm kind of fooling everyone, even though I'm doing all of this, even though like, it's like I didn't think that I was actually allowed to be the person who would just like secretly leave their life behind. Also, I don't know if I mentioned that, but yeah, literally no one on earth knew that I was in Costa Rica or that I was doing this except for my family, my roommates, and like one friend. Because I was just like, no, this is, I literally just vanished into the jungle to be like, I need to just figure this out. And also, was fearing judgment because people weren't supposed to be traveling at the time. And there was all this stuff, but I just, so much of it at its core was also me just being like, I actually, yes, we have all been in isolation for a year, and I kind of want to be in isolation even more. Like, I don't want a soul on earth to know where I am. I remember my dad asking me if I would forward him, where, like, the address of where I was staying, the booking confirmation, so he knew where I was. And there was this, like, anger that, like, just seeped through me. And he's just a beautiful, good dad who is completely within his right to ask to know where his child, even though I was a full fledged adult, but still to be like, you're in a foreign country in the middle of a pandemic, like knowing where you're sleeping, might be nice for him. And totally fair. And I knew that. Logically, I knew that. But the actual cellular feeling in me, right? Of having him or anyone be like, where are you sleeping? Like, it felt like this like cage where I'm just like, I just need to be free. I just need to be completely off the face of the planet while being on the planet in a way that is, yeah, so alive, so true, so real. Um, and it was such a gift, honestly, to be able, I believe that this is still such an option, right, to travel in this way, even after borders have opened and life has gotten back to whatever it is now. But there are ways that we can travel that are more off grid, more, it's like, for the love of God, if you if you want to experience this, it's like, trust your intuition, trust your heart, put the phone down. You don't need to know where you're going. You don't need to know where you're sleeping. You don't need to know that this random person that you met on some app that's like how to find friends in foreign countries. It's like, no, you find friends in foreign countries. You don't need to know someone that you're meeting up with for coffee in 3 days. Let the universe just guide you. Let it all unfold. Um and so yeah, I got to this hostel, and I remember walking in and feeling uncomfortable, feeling like I didn't belong, and also hearing these two people having a conversation in English. But it was obvious that English was both of their second languages, right? And I just had this moment of like pure, I don't know, again, it's that thing that you can't remember forgetting because you aren't even aware that you've lost it. But that feeling of being like, I'm in a Spanish speaking country. I'm listening to two people speak in a language that is not the native language of this country. For better or for worse, I'm not like pro English having colonized the whole world. And it is the universal language at this point. And so I'm in the Spanish speaking country listening to these two people whose native languages are not English communicate in English and make plans and connect and just see one another. And it's that thing of being like, this world exists, this life exists. People are out here just living. And one of the things that I love about intentional travel, about listening to the voice within, right, is that it's like, it's such a gauntlet, I'll use that word again, of emotion and experience. And one of the reasons that I know it is a spiritual practice, at least for me, is because you get confronted with all of these things that in normal life, right, like, yes, you're gonna face adversity and challenges and stuff, and there's always opportunities to grow and choose differently and understand and see the lessons, see the magic. When you're traveling, it's like that happens a thousandfold. Be it you miss a bus and then you're this and then you're that, and it's like, how are you going to handle that? What are you going to do? Are you going to trust, or are you going to cling on and be like, meh, are you going to get mad and yell at somebody about a ticket that it's like, okay, cool, enjoy that experience. Being an angry human in a foreign country sounds like a miserable way to be, but we've all done it, right? Because it has nothing to do with the circumstance and everything to do with our own internal baggage. And as somebody who has had a lot of internal baggage my entire life, right? Like, and wanting to clear it. That's the thing with me too, is that I'm like, I've had all of these really intense feelings and things I was attached to, and just stuff that had such a grip on me for so long. And I've had this burning desire to clear it and to find ways to just be in harmony. But being in harmony actually means fully releasing what it is that I was carrying and clung on to. Um, yeah, and all of this to say, I get into my bed. I got a private room because I was like, I don't like hostels, actually. I don't want to share a room with people I don't know. And also it was the pandemic. And so I was doing this weird thing where I was like, morally, I think it's okay that I'm in the country, but I'm also going to observe COVID restrictions by getting my own room and, doing, I don't know, just making moral justifications, which is fine. Like, that's what we do at all times, right? It's like we're guided by whatever moral compass we think is the right one at the time. And I get into the bed, and the bed, that smell when sheets or like clothes or fabric just like didn't fully dry before someone put it away. It's like that mildewy smell. The bed smelled like that. Like, it was like, not, it didn't feel dirty, but it also just kind of, I hate that smell. That smell to me is like, ooh. I mean, I guess it does feel dirty, right? But it's like, that it's like that. Technically, it smells that way because it was cleaned, but it just, and so I'm like laying in this bed, and I can hear other people in the hostel because the walls are this thin, and it smells, and I'm not totally comfortable. And I remember going to sleep that night, having one of those moments where it's like, I woke up this morning in a very nice, comfortable hotel bed in Dallas, No one on earth really knows where I am. The bed smells. I can hear other people in the hostel. I don't know where I am. Am I even allowed to be here? What am I doing? And it was that simultaneous feeling of being like, I am home and I am exactly where I need to be, and also being like, what the actual F have I done? Being like, okay, well, we're in it now. And now that we're in it, like, I guess we've got to keep going, but also, like, oh, I forgot how uncomfortable this is. Like, it's so uncomfortable. And, like, I don't know where I'm sleeping tomorrow. I don't know what anything is, right? And I ended up booking a few days, deciding that when I got up the next day, um, I ended up booking a few days in that town that my good friend had told me about, and taking taking a bus down there, which also by the way, if you're watching this instead of listening, I've mentioned this before, but I bounce on an exercise ball. I try not to for the most part, but sometimes I do it absentmindedly. I don't try not to in my normal life, but when I'm recording these things, I know it can be distracting, but also it helps me a lot. So that's part of me. Bouncy. Anyway, um yeah, and I trusted this friend, and I just, looking back again, it's like, at the time, one of the million things that I was learning was how to trust my intuition again, because I had been intuition led for so much of my life, and I had also questioned it. And this friend, having kind of presented this place to me, was part of that. Yeah, and I booked this. Well, I didn't book the bus. You couldn't book the bus. There's nothing. At least Costa Rica has a bunch of different bus companies that all go in different directions throughout the country, and they all operate a little bit differently, but also kind of similarly. Some of them have websites and are very, what we would consider maybe to be modern, and some of them are a little bit more like, you're kind of operating in a, like, I'm pretty sure the bus is going to come, and I think it's going to come from over here, and, like, I gave that guy money, and does that mean it's going to work? And where I was going had one of those systems, right? Where it was not quite that archaic, but I had been able to find online where a bus station was that was supposed to take me where I was going, but there's no Google Maps or anything for what it is that I'm doing. I can't just, like, put it in. Um, and so I go to the bus station, and sure enough, the bus is in fact going where I need to go. And I buy a ticket for like $6, I think it was, to take me like 6 hours across Costa Rica to a place that I, just was trusting that the friend who had told me to go there, was like, okay, yeah, I believe you. And I had pre-booked a few nights in a hostel for when I got there. In a shared room this time, because I was like, I'm going to save money and I'm going to be social. And again, I got there and I'm just like, well, I feel not good being here. I was like, I feel old and I feel uncool and I feel whatever. And the first night, because something that I used to do much more in my life, which I now recognize as a pattern as well, is like, when I was feeling uncomfortable somewhere, I would leave and go. When I was feeling uncomfortable, sorry, I should say, in like a home environment, I would always want to be as far away from it as possible. And one of the ways that I would distract myself from sitting in discomfort for a long time would be to keep myself super busy and to just be out in the world all the time. And there was a lot of magic that came from that, and also a lot of avoidance, right? So I'm in this hostel and I'm like, wow, I feel really uncomfortable being here. I'm going to just go away from being here. And I ended up going to this vegan restaurant called Jammin, and meeting this man named Temps, who I will invite onto the podcast at some point. He's just this incredible soul. And in so many ways, he was the first person that I really met in Costa Rica. I'd had a few interactions and conversations, but nothing like the way that I truly believe is that connection. And Temps, it was his birthday the next day. He's an Aries as well. He's a March Aries. And you just walk in and you just, the second that you know what it's like, the second that you meet somebody and you can just see and feel their soul and their heart and their depth, and just kind of know that they're one of you, right? Um and I don't even believe we had that much of a chat that first night. But I sat down because I was still kind of figuring out how to, like, talk to people. And yeah, Um, but I sat down and I ate his food, which was medicine. That was one of the beautiful gifts he was giving the world. Was, he had, on his journey, he had really understood how food becomes medicine for bodies, and that was the gift at the time that he was giving. He was creating these incredible, vegan meals with just real whole foods, Jamaican inspired, and yeah, infusing his love and energy into everything that he was creating. And I just remember sitting there during that first meal. And again, it's one of those moments where you're just like, how is it possible that everything that has happened in the span of these few days has happened? And that's one of the infinite things that I love about travel, especially as a spiritual tool as well. Because the nature of time, time is not real. Time is this thing that we have constructed as humans to help us basically like keep schedules, but it's not real. Everything that has ever happened, everything that will ever happen is happening in this exact moment, which is the only thing that exists, all of it simultaneously. And there are infinite ways that we can come to understand that as beings, right? It's very hard for a lot of people to kind of comprehend, because they're like, but yesterday I did this and tomorrow I will do that, so it must be real. And it's like, well, okay, it's not. um but understanding the nature of time, right, when we're traveling is like, anybody who has traveled at all, those days where there's so much that happens, be it that you actually woke up in your bed and went to sleep on the other side of the world, or be it one of those days where you wake up and you just have those conversations, meet the people, go on these adventures, do the things that are just, so full, and your eyes open in all of these ways, and you're like, I didn't even know it was possible to experience these things. And then you're going to bed and you're like, how, there's no way that all of that happened in the space between sunrise and sunset. There's no way. And yet it did. And the nature, and it's just this like, or you go on a week-long trip where your entire life changes. You don't come home the same person. And in your normal, quote unquote, life, every day is kind of the same. You're begging hours to pass because you hate it, what it is that you're doing. You want to just go home so that you can watch Netflix or whatever it is that you do. But everything feels the same. There's no actual recognition of the expansiveness of all of it. The truth is, in this one human life, yes, most of us will get however many decades, even just call it 100 years to be easy, and that's 100 revolutions around the sun. But the amount of life experience, the amount of things experienced, the amount of thoughts and love and moments experienced in those 100 revolutions is infinitely different for every single person. And when you are doing the exact same thing every single day, time literally moves in a different way. You jump, like I said before, like going on a plane, it's a portal. It's a way to jump a timeline, because you are stepping into this current that doesn't exist within the life that you had been leading before. And all of a sudden, it's like the amount of things, yes, the second hand on the clock moves in the same way ish, but the actual depth of what it is that you are doing changes. And that's what's real. That's actually the experience of time, right? Is how much is changing. And travel is such an instrument for change, and an instrument to understand just how vast the space is between each sunrise and sunset. So anyway, I'm sitting there having this kind of like, yeah, just recognition of like, okay, and we're at the start, and I'm still doubting myself, and I'm still questioning things, and also, every bit of my being was coming back. It's almost like, I imagine like a bear waking up from hibernation, or something coming out of a thaw, where it's like, okay, this is what it feels like. This is what being alive feels like. This is joy. This is right. Even with all of the fear and the question and everything within me, like, I know, and yeah, that is where I'm going to leave it today. We have gotten to day 2, and there's so much more. Part of me feels like, I don't know. I was going to say that, we might move faster through things after these first 2 days. It's like the actual stuff starts happening a bit more. and it's feeling, but it's also stuff. And I am realizing too that I believe I actually might have told this entire episode already a few months ago, but it needed to be told again, apparently. So if you listen to that one and you listen to this one, thank you. And if you're brand new, then also welcome. You didn't even know that this had already been told. But the next portion of the story is when the beings started showing up, the humans who started showing up, that you know planted some of the seeds, dropped some of the Hansel and Gretel breadcrumbs that led me yeah, to my first experience with ayahuasca. And we will talk more about that in the coming episodes. Thank you for being here. You can read my journals from this time on Patreon. It's the raw experience of what it was like to be feeling these things, of being on the airplane, leaving Dallas, and feeling the pieces starting to come back to life, and the highs and the lows. And yeah, it's really magic. And if you're invested in this story, if you're along for the ride, the journals are really going to be a way to also see so much of the power, because so much of the story is about my own ability. It's intuition, it's inner knowledge. It's being guided by that deeper knowing, and so many of the ways that I manifested everything or could see it and feel it, stuff that I was just like, I know that this is true, but I don't know how. And then a few weeks later, a few months later, the things that I was so wrapped up in not understanding, it's like they all come into being. Everything comes, yeah, it's just pure magic, the way that it all unravels. And it's a much deeper insight into a lot of the inner working of what my mind was like at the time, because now I'm someone who is much more at peace and on the other side of the journey. And I have so much love for the me that was really figuring it out and was at the highest highs of just pure bliss and magic and wonder, and then also at these incredible low lows of being like, what am I doing? Am I crazy? What's going on? So, anyway, those are available on Patreon, where you can support me and this journey and this work. I have a few courses actually coming out soon that will help other people prepare for and integrate after the intentional trips of their own. Um, I'll be sharing more about that soon. And yeah, you can follow me on Instagram, TikTok, all of the places. Feel free to reach out to me as well at intentionaltrips@gmail.com. And yeah, if you have any questions, I'm guiding this through my own story, through my own my own experience, that and I'm just sharing in the way that feels right in any given moment. And if you have any questions about anything, feel free to reach out, to drop them in comments, to send me an email, to whatever it is, and I will clarify and I will speak to whatever it is that is brought up. But until then, I'm just going to keep going in a way that feels good, and sending so much love to the whole world. Thank you for being here, and I will see you next time.